The night was unusually silent, as though the world itself was holding its breath. In the dim light of my office, I stared at the framed photo on my desk, me, much younger, standing between my mother and stepdad on the day of their wedding. My smile was wide, hopeful, desperate even, because at that time, I believed I was finally part of a family that would never abandon me again. But that hope had long turned to ash. If someone had told me then that years later, I'd be sitting here with tears stinging my eyes, trying to decide whether to let my mother claim a piece of the company I built with my own blood and sweat, I would have laughed in their face. But here I was, caught between memory and betrayal, between forgiveness and justice. I grew up in Ibadan, Nigeria, raised by my single mother, Funk. My father had walked out before I even turned 2, and my earliest memory was of my mother juggling 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. I adored her. She was my world. Whenever the landlord banged on our door demanding rent, whenever we ate watery beans for 3 days straight, I would look at her face and promise myself I'd make her proud one day. When I turned 13, she met a man, Bode. He was charming, successful, and for the first time in my life, I saw her laugh without restraint. Their wedding followed quickly. I wore a simple pink dress that day, standing between them in the church photo that now stared at me from my desk. My mother glowed. Bode called me our daughter. For the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I belonged. But it didn't last. The first cracks showed when Bode's business took a downturn. He lost some contracts, and our home, which had once been warm and filled with laughter, became filled with hushed arguments behind closed doors. My mother, who once shielded me from the world, began to change. Her words grew sharper, her tone colder. One evening, when I was 15, I overheard the words that carved themselves into my heart forever. "She's not our priority anymore, Bode," my mother's voice said, clipped, emotionless. Bode replied softly, "But she's your daughter, Funk. She's old enough now. We can't keep wasting what little we have on her. We have to think of ourselves first." I stood frozen in the hallway, clutching my school bag, my heart pounding so loudly I feared they would hear it. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, as the truth sank in. My mother, the woman I had lived for, had chosen someone else over me. From then on, everything changed. School fees became harder to come by. I was told to manage torn uniforms, to borrow textbooks from classmates, while my mother and stepdad managed to buy themselves new clothes, attend weddings, and smile for photographs that excluded me. By 16, I learned not to ask for help. I hawked puff-puff after school, saved every kobo, and prayed my way through exams. The bitterness burned in me, but so did determination. If they wouldn't prioritize me, I would prioritize myself. And so I worked. Fast forward a decade. Through sheer willpower, sleepless nights, and countless rejections, I built a tech startup from the ground up. At first, it was just me in a tiny one-room apartment with a borrowed laptop, coding until my fingers cramped. Then came one investor, then another, until finally my company grew into a multi-million naira empire. People now called me CEO Ada. I employed over 50 staff. I was invited to speak at conferences across Africa. My story, girl abandoned by her own parents, now a powerhouse in the tech world, was told in newspapers. To the world, it was a fairy tale. But deep inside, I carried the scar of that night in the hallway, of those 7 words my mother had spoken, "She's not our priority anymore." I hadn't seen much of my mother and Bode in those years. They had moved to Lagos after another of Bode's failed ventures. Occasionally, she called, but the conversations were brief, shallow. She never apologized, never acknowledged what she had said or done. It was as though she had erased that chapter from her memory. Until last week. She came to my office, unannounced. I almost didn't recognize her at first. Her hair was streaked with gray, her face worn. She wore a faded Ankara wrapper, clutching a handbag that looked older than my company itself. "Ada, my daughter," she exclaimed, arms outstretched as though time and betrayal could be undone with one hug. I froze. My staff stared, confused, as she wrapped her arms around me. Her scent was the same, soap and shea butter, but it carried no comfort anymore. "What brings you here, Mama?" I asked stiffly once we were alone. She sighed dramatically, settled into the chair opposite mine, and began a story I knew was rehearsed. Bode had lost everything. They were drowning in debt. She had heard about my success, seen my face in the newspapers. "And since we are family," she said, her eyes glistening with crocodile tears, "we believe it is only right that you help us. You are doing so well. Even a small share in your company will go a long way to rescue us." My chest tightened with anger so sharp I thought it would choke me. A share in my company? The company I had built while they turned their backs on me? I leaned back in my chair, staring at her. A share? Mama, do you remember what you once told Bode about me? That I was not your priority anymore? For a second, her eyes flickered. She remembered. Of course she remembered. But then she forced a laugh. "Ah, Ada, you still hold on to childish things. That was long ago. You were stubborn, always asking for too much. We did what we thought was best." My hands trembled under the desk, but my voice was steady. "What you thought was best was abandoning your own child." Her expression hardened. The mask of tears slipped. "Abandoning? You are ungrateful. Do you think you made yourself who you are today? Did I not give birth to you? Did I not suffer to raise you? Everything you have, it's because of the foundation I gave you. Whether you like it or not, I deserve a part of it." Her words sliced through me like knives. For a moment, I saw not the broken woman sitting across from me, but the mother I once adored, the one I had promised to make proud. And yet, all I could feel was the echo of that night when she declared I was no longer her priority. That night, after she left my office, I couldn't sleep. I kept pacing, torn between anger and guilt. The African culture I grew up in screamed in my ears, "Honor your parents, no matter what." But another voice, deep inside me, whispered, "Does a mother who abandons her child still deserve to be called a mother?" I thought of the young girl I had been, hawking puff-puff to pay for her textbooks, crying silently into her torn pillow because her mother had chosen comfort over her. That girl deserved justice. That girl deserved to be protected. And yet, here I was, being asked to hand over a share of everything I had bled to build, to the very woman who had told the world I wasn't her priority. Days later, my mother returned, this time with Bode. He was thinner now, his once proud shoulders slumped. They both looked desperate, worn down by life. Bode spoke quietly, with none of the arrogance he once carried. "Ada," he said, "we are not asking for much. Just a chance to survive. If you can give us even 10% of your company, it will save us." I stared at them, and a bitter smile curved my lips. 10% of my company was worth more than they had ever given me in my entire life. The irony was almost laughable. And that was where my dilemma began. Should I cut them off completely, denying them any claim over my success? Or should I give them something, not because they deserved it, but because I refused to let bitterness define me? The decision hung heavy in the air, pressing on my chest, suffocating me. I knew whatever choice I made would not only shape my company's future, it would shape the kind of woman I had become. Was I the abandoned daughter who finally had the chance to turn her back on those who betrayed her? Or was I the strong, resilient woman who refused to let the past dictate her compassion? The clock ticked in the silence of my office as the photo of our wedding day family smiled down at me mockingly. I had to choose. The silence in my office the next day was suffocating. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face, her voice echoing in my mind, "Whether you like it or not, I deserve a part of it." The audacity gnawed at me. She had discarded me when I needed her the most, and now she wanted to reap from what she had sown nothing into. But anger alone could not guide me, I needed clarity. That evening, I drove to the old neighborhood where I grew up. The streets had changed, new shops stood where we once bought akara, and some houses had been torn down. Yet the memories clung like shadows. I walked past the compound where I used to hawk Puff Puff, past the dusty schoolyard where I studied under a broken roof. Each step reminded me of the resilience that had carried me here. At the gate of my former house, I stopped. The paint was peeling, the walls cracked. It was a shell of the place I had once called home. For a moment, I could almost see my younger self, thin, barefoot, clutching exercise books too heavy for her frail arms. She looked at me with wide, questioning eyes, as if asking, "Are you really going to give them what they never gave you?" I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. "No," I whispered to the ghost of that girl. "I won't forget you." The following week, I invited my mother and Bode to a quiet restaurant. I needed to end this face-to-face. They arrived early, dressed as though they wanted to look respectable, but the desperation still showed in their eyes. As soon as we sat, my mother clasped my hands dramatically. "Ada, you know blood is thicker than water. No matter what happened before, we are still your family. We are suffering. How can you turn your back on us?" I pulled my hands away gently, my voice firm. "Family is not just blood, Mama. Family is who stands with you when no one else does. Tell me, when I was struggling, hawking food to pay my school fees, where were you?" Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. Bode cleared his throat, trying to salvage the conversation. "Ada, we made mistakes. But surely you can forgive. 10% of your company means nothing to you now, but it means survival to us." I leaned forward, my tone sharp. 10% is not nothing. It represents my sleepless nights, my sacrifices, my tears. It represents everything I built when you left me behind. And you, both of you, want to claim it, as though you earned it? My mother's eyes hardened. "You are ungrateful. Without me, there would be no you. Without me, you wouldn't even exist to build this company." The words pierced me, but I refused to flinch. I exhaled slowly. "You're right. Without you, I wouldn't exist. And because of that, I will not watch you starve. But you will not touch my company. Not 1%. Her eyes widened in shock. I continued, my voice steady. "I will set up a small monthly allowance for you, enough for food and rent. But the business I built with my pain is mine. You gave up the right to it the day you told Bode I was not your priority." My mother's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Bode sat silently, staring at the table. I stood, gathering my bag. "This is my final word. Take it or leave it." And with that, I walked away, leaving them sitting in silence, the weight of my decision pressing down on all of us. For weeks after that meeting, the silence from my mother's side was deafening. No calls. No texts. Not even a rumor carried back to me by extended relatives. At first, I thought they had accepted my decision, bitter though it was. But deep down, I knew my mother well enough to understand her pride would not let her bow out quietly. And I was right. One Sunday morning, after church, I found her waiting at the gate of my house. She looked thinner, her wrapper loose around her waist, her eyes sunken. She didn't speak immediately, just followed me into the compound as though she still had that unspoken right. Inside, she broke down in tears. "Ada, I was wrong," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I thought I was protecting myself back then, but I was hurting you. I was selfish. I thought Bode would provide us with security, and I pushed you aside. But you became more than I could have ever dreamed. I am proud of you, even if I don't deserve to say it." Her words cut deeper than anger ever could. For years, I had longed for this acknowledgement, for her to admit what she had done. But now, hearing it, I felt no triumph, only sorrow for the years wasted, the love lost. I sat opposite her, my chest tight. "Mama, do you know what those words did to me? You told Bode I was not your priority. Do you know how many nights I cried myself to sleep believing I was unloved, unwanted?" Tears streamed down her face. I know. And I cannot take it back. But Ada, please. I'm old. I do not want to die without peace between us. I don't care about your company anymore. I just want my daughter back. In that moment, I realized something profound. The empire I had built, the millions in my bank account, the applause from strangers, all of it had been born from a wound. But the wound still bled, quietly, beneath the surface. Forgiveness was not about letting her touch my company. It was about freeing myself from the bitterness that had chained me since childhood. I reached across the table, slowly, and took her hand. Her skin was rough, her palms scarred from years of labor and mistakes. I will never give you a share of my company, Mama, I said firmly. But I will give you something else. I will give you care, dignity, and a place to rest your head. I will not let you suffer. But I cannot erase the past. You will have to live with it, just as I have. She nodded slowly, her tears falling onto our joined hands. For the first time in years, I saw the woman I had once adored, not perfect, not faultless, but human. Weeks later, I arranged for her and Bode to live in a modest apartment, funded by me. I hired a nurse to check in on them. It wasn't the grand rescue they had expected, but it was enough to keep them alive with dignity. And as for me, I kept building my company, stronger than ever. But in my heart, I carried a quiet lesson that I knew I had to share. We cannot choose the family we are born into, but we can choose the family we build for ourselves. Sometimes, those who should have protected us will betray us. Sometimes, those who should have loved us will abandon us. But in the end, our strength is not just in what we build from our pain, it is in how we refuse to let that pain poison who we become. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not mean allowing people to take advantage again. Forgiveness means freeing ourselves, choosing compassion without surrendering justice. And as I look back at the girl who once hawked Puff Puff to pay her school fees, I whisper to her, "You are always your own priority. And you always will be."